Okay, so what I'm gonna do is do an example that is kind of along the lines of the homework assignment for this week, where you have to make both histograms and dot plots. Now, histograms are something that you can do in Excel. Dot plots, you'd have to either draw it by hand on paper or using a stylus. I'm going to use Microsoft Paint of all things. Um, but that's what we're going to do for this because there's not really an easy way to do a dot plot in Excel. So anyway, here we've got a spreadsheet of some grades. So we've got some names of some students. We've got the semester that they took a class. We've got the percentage that they got, as well as the grade that goes with that. And then we have the class that they took, either math or English. So the questions that go along with this, I've got them in this page here. So what are the variables in the data set? So this is the first question that you have to do, kind of along the lines of the homework assignment. So we've got the student is the first one here. So what are the variables? You've got student, you've got percentage, and what else do we have? Semester, grade, and class. So student, semester, percentage, grade, and class. So those are the 5 variables that are in this particular data set. So then they ask us to classify them as either quantitative or qualitative and then give their level of measure. So I'm going to make this a little bigger here. So I've got some more room. All right, so student that's just names. So basically quantitative is anything numeric. So since it's not numeric, that's going to be qualitative. And then your levels of measurement, the levels that you have, there's nominal, ordinal, let's see, there's nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. So these first 2 are going to be anything qualitative. So those 2 are qualitative, and then these 2 are quantitative right there. So we'll say this one's qualitative, this one's quantitative. So that's kind of how you can tell which is which. So back to this. Student is qualitative. Nominal is just names. Ordinal is categories in some sort of order. For ordinal, you could think of something like gold, silver, and bronze, or letter grades A, B, C, D, F. There is an implied order there. This is just going to be nominal because it's just names of students. There's not really an implied order of one versus another. Next, we have semester, which is also qualitative. That is not a numeric value. It's fall, spring, or summer. Those I would say are ordinal because they do, in a given academic year, you have a fall semester, you have a spring semester, and you have a summer semester. So there actually is an order to them. The percentage, that is going to be quantitative because it is a number. So with with an interval, an interval is something where there's not really a meaningful zero. So temperature is the go-to example of something that's an interval. Now with a grade, that also, like, just because you have 0% doesn't mean you did no work. Another reason it's an interval is it's essentially limited to the numbers 0 to 100. And it's like if one student got an 80 and another student got a 40, a ratio would imply that the 80% grade did twice as much work as a 40% grade, which is not necessarily what that means. So anyway, the long and short of it is I would call that an interval. Now, something like wind speed would actually be a ratio, just as a hint, shall we say, because wind speed, if you're 0 miles per hour, that means there's no wind that is blowing. But in this case, a percentage is actually an interval. The grade, that is qualitative. And then that also happens to be ordinal. One thing I will point out, just because something is a number, it can still be a qualitative variable, and it can still be an ordinal variable. So like the categories of a hurricane, a category 4 hurricane versus a category 5 hurricane, those are, even though they look like numbers, they could just as easily have called them A, B, C, D, like the grades. So even though they're numbers, they're actually ordinal qualitative variables. And then lastly, we have the class. So as far as the class goes, that is also qualitative. It is definitely not numeric, so it's not quantitative. And it's qualitative, and it's also nominal. There's no particular order between math or English. It's just those are the classes that they have. So the big thing we're going to do is we're going to make a histogram for the percentages. So if we go back to our spreadsheet here, we want to make a histogram using these data right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight this field of data, and we're going to go Insert, and we're going to do a recommended chart, and we're going to go to all charts and look for histogram. There it is right there. So we're going to pick histogram. There's our lovely histogram. I've got the chart area thing. I'm going to scoot it over just so it's not on top of my actual data. Now, one thing I'm going to do with this histogram is you can change it so that it's got a different number of bars if you want to. So I'm going to click on the bars of my histogram here. So I have the bars highlighted, and we're going to do right click on it, and we're going to do format the data series. And let's see here. Let's do the horizontal axis. Here we go. So we're going to do this drop-down menu and pick the horizontal axis. And then you've basically got two options here. You could do the number of bins. So like I could make the number of bins be 5. And then I end up with something like that. And you notice I'm getting these decimal values here. And so maybe, maybe instead of having just 5 bins, maybe I'll pick the bin width option. And since these are percentages, maybe I'll have the bin width be 10 since grades tend to be organized in fields of 10. So like I've got 61 to 81, 71 to 81, 81 to 91, 91 to 101. And actually, maybe we'll drop that down to 9. Okay, so now we're at 70. So we go to 70, 79. And it's still being kind of funny here. All right, well, anyway, you've got a couple of options. You can either pick a number of bins or you can specify a width for your bins. Now, since the highest grade is a 100, I'm just going to do groups of 9 and leave it at that. So these are basically, you've got your D's, your C's, these are going to be your B's, and then up here you've got A's right here. So anyway, there is a histogram. It says, what patterns do you notice about your histogram? For this particular histogram, what you might notice is that most of the grades are below 80. So most of the grades are C's and D's just based on the percentages here. So that would be a pattern I could describe. So you could say most grades are below 80. So just something you might notice about the grades. So then they say make dot plots of the grades based by class. So what we're going to look at here. So I've got a thing where it's got math. So I'm going to look at the grade distributions for math only, and then do the grades. Just put a dot for each A that I see, each B, each C, and each D. So let's go back to our spreadsheet here. So we're only looking at math. So what do I have? I've got 2 A's and 2 B's. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a dot here. So we'll do a circle. Maybe we'll do it in green. So we've got, there's a dot, and there's a dot, and there's a dot, and there's a dot. So we've got 2 for each of those. Let's go back to our spreadsheet here. Let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3 C's and 1, 2, 3 D's. So I'm going to put 3 dots for each of those. So we'll do a dot 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. So that would be what it would look like for math. So you basically got 3 circles stacked on top of each other for the C's and the D's. There were 3 of each. And then 2 circles stacked on top of each other for the A's and the B's. I have another one that is similar. For English. So let's bring that one up. So for English, let's go back to our spreadsheet here. So what do we have for English? So for English, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 C's. So go back here. We've got 5 C's for English, so we're going to get some green dots here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a lot of C's there. Go back to our spreadsheet. There are 2 D's and then 1A and 1B. So we'll go back to our dot plot here. So there was 1A, there was 1B, and there were 2 D's. So there you go. Now it also asks us to write any inferences that we can based on the dot plots. So the math grades were a lot more evenly spread out. There were 2 A's, 2 B's, 3 C's, 3 D's. They were, there's just 2 or 3 of each. So what you could say is the math grades were evenly spread out, since there were either 2 or 3 of each and every category. As for the English, very few A's, B's, only 2 D's. Virtually every grade was a C. Like 5 out of the, 9 were all C's. So English grades were mostly C's. So that would be an inference you could make about the dot plots. So this is kind of an example that's very, very similar to the homework assignment that you have to do. As I say, you can make the histogram in Excel. When it comes to the dot plot, for that you'll need to have a picture, basically. You can either draw it by hand and take a picture of it, or you can do like a screenshot if you do it on a computer, kind of like the way I did. But hopefully that gives you some pointers on what to do for week 11. So good luck. Don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. And that's all I got for you.